So here you have the best representative. It's Kaliyeva with the biggest gallery called Aspan with a very huge practice. There's also Vlad Sludskiy. He's representing Kazart, and also he has European Cultural Alliance, so they do public programs and also non-commercial projects beside commercial practices. And also the Danagul Tolepbay from, these are galleries from Almaty, and these galleries are from Astana, called Pygmalion. So actually all of them are having Aspan and Pygmalion having amazing spaces here at Asia Now, and they represent a very important and major artists from our place. So I would like to actually start the conversation of today. Yeah, and here was the very nice question of the gallerist from Mongolia. She said what would be the first question for her, and maybe she asked for advice how to be introduced to the international market. And so maybe my first question would be, how did you start? Maybe you can underline how it was, maybe because the practice is for many years, for decades. So how it was before and how it's going now. Maybe there is some slight difference, or maybe it remained the same, or what do you feel like, how you can think about this and talk? Mika, давай ты, может быть.
Hello, thank you everybody for coming. It's amazing to see this year, this focus on Central Asia. I think this is the first time it ever happened in a fair when there is non-commercial exhibition on Central Asia, uniting a lot of artists and also some galleries representing Central Asia. So thank you very much to Alexandra Fain and Slav Tatars for making it happen. And speaking about our topic today, I will tell you a little bit about my story, how I founded the gallery. So I studied in United Kingdom at UCL. I studied history of art. And when I was a student, I was obviously very interested not only in what was happening in the Western world in the contemporary art, but also was very curious what was happening back at home in Kazakhstan. And at the time, the situation was that you could come to Kazakhstan and you wouldn't really see works by contemporary artists, even though you might see them in different biennials, in museum exhibitions all over the world. Each time you came to Kazakhstan, the National Museum wouldn't be showing any contemporary art. There were not many organizations where you could see. So the only way to discover is by personally knowing the artists, and then you could visit their studios and really know what they were doing. But it was also very interesting that by visiting the artists, I started to understand that actually the artists didn't know what other artists were doing because there was nowhere to be seen, and they only met into international exhibitions. They will be like, oh, you did this project, amazing, like I'm also exhibiting here with that. And when I graduated from university, I wanted to go back to Almaty, to Kazakhstan, and I really thought about which form my work should take. I always knew I want to be involved with arts in Kazakhstan and broader in Central Asia. But at the time, it was very difficult to imagine myself, for example, working for a museum or being an independent curator, because there were not many projects happening and there were not really spaces where you could exhibit art. I really thought about different forms. Maybe it should be something educational, or it should be a foundation so you can work with like other non-governmental organizations. But then I thought to myself that probably the most basic and important thing to do at this stage in the development of Kazakhstani art scene is to open a gallery, a commercial gallery, because it's important to have a place in Almaty where on a regular basis you can see exhibitions, to have a stable program with a clear vision, but also to be able to sell works locally, internationally, so the artists can support themselves. Because at the time when I went back to Kazakhstan, many artists, even though they were very famous, exhibiting at, I don't know, leading venues around the world, a lot of them had like a secondary job. Like some artists were working in the theater, creating decorations, somebody was working as a photographer, somebody was teaching. And obviously these kind of activities, they distract the attention of the artists from their main goal, which is to create art. So I have founded the gallery in 2015, and first we didn't have our own space, and we're doing exhibitions at the Kosteyev National Museum, which is like our biggest national museum in Almaty. And little by little, our program started to grow. In the beginning, I focused on mid-career artists because those were the artists who were like considered like international stars. And even though I was very curious about the younger scene as well, I thought to start with, this kind of artists, which are already known abroad, should be also known in our home country. So I started to exhibit artists like Yerbulsin Milzibekov, Elena and Viktor Vorobyov, Saida Tabekov, and that generation of artists. From 2017, we have our permanent space in Almaty, where we hold about 4 exhibitions per year. And we started to add younger artists to our roster. And we try to support artists in all their creation, from funding production budgets, to publications, to exhibitions, to providing administrative support. Even simple things like, for example, sending your work to international biennale. Sometimes it's difficult because there is a lot of like customs information, shipping, and it's all like very time consuming. It requires certain skills and knowledge. And the mere fact that we were able to assist artists with that, I think helped a lot to the artists to focus like on their works. We very often participate in international art fairs. Like, for example, it's our second time at Asia Now. We participate in Art Dubai every year. Just last month we were at Contemporary Istanbul. And it's for a gallery which is located very far from any centers of contemporary art. It's very important to be present, to be out there, to meet people. Like the number of people that pass through our booth today, for example, is what we have maybe in 2 years in Almaty. But this is changing because since I opened the gallery, there were a lot of new projects that started in Almaty and in the broader region. Like, for example, Vlad Sludskiy developed this wonderful public art festival, and they were also holding for many years a summer school for artists, which I think contributed largely to the development of contemporary art with the younger generations. Because at the time I opened the gallery, we had a generation of artists who were in their early 50s. And then there were not many younger artists. I think it's partly due to the lack of institutional support, but it's also because of lack of educational resources. And thanks to a project that Vlad started with the summer school of, how do you call it, like artistic gesture?
Yeah, the School of Artistic Gesture, and then we switched to Yagın. It's a rebranded program.
Yeah, so now that program as well has a permanent space in Almaty, and there are programs not only during the summer, but throughout the year. There was obviously this wonderful project, the new institution called Tselinny, which has announced its opening in 2018, and since then has published numerous books, held exhibitions, did the Biennale of Sound Art, and there is really kind of like this incredible, I think, artistic upheaval almost in our region, in Tashkent, in Astana, with the opening of Danagul's gallery. So it's really incredible to see all this happen, and yeah, I know the question was regarding the art market, but
no, it was mainly about how did you start, because actually you did a huge impact and you still contributing at the market. So it was just your experience, so to share that, like the highlight. But we're going to speak about that as well. So Vlad, maybe you can also share your experience.
That was a confession, though. We all need a little bit therapy when talking about Central Asian markets. But thank you, Mika. Thanks a lot. And yeah, many things I can drop on the table, but the metaphor I really like when it comes to education and we're talking about education is that I think we should treat a young artist, emerging markets, a lot like we treat kids. You know, we invest our time and knowledge and money and to really ultimate love without really attaching ourselves to you know, any benefits that can come along. And when you do it long enough, and I think part of the problem with Kazakhstani market was that we did have this gap between 90s and 2010s, let's say, when Soros was gone, but nothing new was formed yet. Of course, we need this intergenerational communication, cross-cultural communication. I'm really thinking about Central Asia, not as this isolated new market, but I'm always interested in the bridges that unite Central Asia with other emerging markets. Highly interested in Latin America and African contemporary and how it relates, through oral tradition, nomadic, and somewhat political agendas that are overlapping here and there. But long story short, what I'm trying to say is that I'm indeed very thankful for the synergy that is happening between all of us in the past 5-10 years. And when reading academic articles from the 90s, there was always this feeling, and I'm talking about particularly Актуальное об актуальном. It's a book, it's like an almanac of essays about what was happening in the 90s, and you're reading it, and this feeling of anticipation of the market is already present there, which left me a little bit disappointed at the time when I read it 10 years ago, because I asked myself, okay, if nothing shifted in the past 20 years, how do we really launch this racket? And I feel like we are very close to launching it now. After so many years, it took some time, it took some expertise. But if you look at the biennales, art fairs, you see more and more names from Central Asia. Of course, the colonial turn is contributing heavily to these discourses and how to frame it academically. Part of the issue, I think, for me was also that major institutions classified Central Asia as some kind of extension of the Eastern Europe. You go to Yale 10 years ago and they wouldn't have a department or a faculty or focus concentration studies on Central Asia. But it has also changed rather recently. I believe in 2017 they split these concentrations in numerous universities. I believe Harvard is part of that, and various other museums, of course, fall also into this category. So more or less all these processes are kind of colliding nicely now. In one place, one time, and I'm somehow full of optimism, despite all the obstacles that are there, of course. I mean, needless to say, the world is a mess now, but it's not helping at all. But on average, globally speaking, I think local market has this synergy necessary to push this ecosystem. So we have galleries, we have non-profits. I see more and more new, younger institutions, which is also a good sign. People who worked with us early on are now also opening some other spaces, initiatives, and it can never be enough, because always good reminders that art is not a competition. That's why partly I ended up in this industry. It's always about synergy, and somehow I feel confident.
Well, can I just say
please.
Something? To contradict your words, I really hope we don't launch a rocket. I really hope there is no this kind of boom in the Central Asian art market. I think there are too many examples of bubbles happening in some geographies, like for example, Chinese art market, the Indian art market. I really hope that we can learn from the past mistakes of galleries, artists, curators, advisors, everybody who helped to create this kind of bubbles. I hope that we don't do that, and that what we create is not so much maybe of a market going into the space, but more a sustainable ecosystem where there are enough people in the industry, also collectors, institutions, and corporate sponsors who support the artists. And I think that's much more important than having a separate Central Asian art market.
Yeah, totally. We all know that the pain of overheated artists. Yes.
Hello. So, hello everyone. My name is Danagul, and I started gallery business in 2019. Actually, I came from a big artistic family. My father is foremost artist of Kazakhstan, and his older brother also is a very well-known artist. So, and my grandmother was a famous Kazakh non-traditional healer, Baksa. So, without words, I know what it is actually. And about talking about market. How I came, actually, my father didn't want me to work in art or be an artist or work in art sphere at all. But I was working in national company, like a big holding company. But still, like friends and people used to buy art through me. And then I decided to launch a gallery in Astana. So I was part of Asia Now last year. I was the only gallery from Central Asia. But there was no visibility at all. You came to my booth, remember? But still, what I want to say is like Tselinny and Slavs and Tatars, like unity and brings more attention. That's why I want to say that we need to create maybe unity or union of galleries in Kazakhstan. Also, we need transparency in pricing. If we talk about problems like which we face, when we unite, we are power. I was the only one, and it was just a little visibility. But this time, I feel a big focus on Central Asian artists, and because of Slavs and Tatars, and because of we, Aspan, you are participating for the second time also. So, and I see, and I'm very happy that almost, how many? 16 artists from Central Asia represented today. So it's a big thing. About art market in Kazakhstan, like I'm doing educational programs also in the northern capital. I'm creating also, inviting some my clients now. I'm making art tours. I want to show what it is to collect. You have to collect. So we need to make a propaganda. Art collecting is not prestigious in Kazakhstan, to tell the truth. People were forming their first capital. And now I see the big interest now in art. So I think we need to make a propaganda of art from the government level probably. So I'm working hard now to create, the government to create a fund, like cultural fund to develop and support local artists from Kazakhstan. Because I'm in Astana and I'm very close to government, and they are now hearing also, because this time I'm supported by Kazakh tourism company, and I think it's a big step. And in Istanbul they supported you. So I want to become like a bridge between government and artists. We really need a cultural fund. In order to support artists to issue funds to create very qualitative works. For this, they need money and funds. So this is my job, and I hope we all contribute a lot. And I think
let's not praise them too much yet. It's just 2 fairs.
Yeah.
They gotta do it 10 times a year, you know.
Yeah, it's true. Basel was successful, by the way. German collectors bought paintings, so we will see.
Well, if there is this kind of like opportunity to work with the government, I was recently asked, what would you do to kind of develop the artistic scene in Kazakhstan more? Like, what can you do to support? And what the government could do? And in my opinion, there are 2 important things that has to be done to develop the artistic scene. Is first of all, to reform our education system. Because if you go to the art academy now, you still have the same professors that are teaching the same kind of Soviet-style academic painting, and the world of art education has, I don't know, swept away like miles away. So this is something that has to be reformed, and could be done on governmental level. And I think the second thing, which is extremely important, is that our museums have more financial support from the government, and they actually have a budget to collect the work by contemporary artists. It will help to contemporary artists to sell their work, to continue working, produce new works, dedicate their time and energy just to producing art, and it will also help us to preserve, study, and interpret our own cultural heritage, which is being created now, and which is completely missed out on by institutions.
Yeah, and also I wanted to add to this, probably because I liked your that you've been mentioning that we are responsible for creating this ecosystem rather than a market in order to be able to function for all of the parts of this ecosystem. But also, it's my question would be, for your opinion, would it be important to state to actually articulate that contemporary culture or contemporary art has to be important for the strategy of the development, or not? No, because for nowadays I can feel that they don't articulate it, so we don't really understand if it's really important or not. Because, for example, the initiative of Kazakh tourism is really good and cool, for my opinion. But does it goes into like a broader program understanding that we need? For example, like we understand that contemporary culture of Kazakhstan is our the most promoted tool, on the international appearance on the international level.
A tricky one, yeah. But here I think we really should just pay attention to how it was done by other emerging markets. Precisely, maybe South Korea would be a good example, and their governmental policies. You don't need to invent bicycle here, you just go there. And in fact, gladly they are, I think, in dialogue with some office people. And you just apply these models, of course, adjusting them and, writing strategies. But of course, it comes down to the politics. And, I wouldn't even open that door because it's a boring, sad, dangerous door. But of course, I don't think in this given current state, they would consider culture as their tool of promoting the values of the country. I don't contemporary culture. Unfortunately, I'm still hesitant because what we see more and more in the world, and here I'm not even talking about Kazakhstan or Central Asia, you went to Hong Kong, you see the same patterns. London, even Art Basel is playing it safe. You don't see much of political art or, critical engagement or discourses. It's really abstract, nice paintings, regretfully, right? But I do not really believe in the world where culture plays a major role in the short term, unfortunately, because we see more like right-wing turn, and cultures are kind of closing now, unfortunately. But maybe it's my humble opinion. Maybe you will have a different one.
I don't know, as for me, I think we should connect also the traditional artists, maybe from 50s, 60s, they are mostly forgotten, to tell the truth. Now I also, in my booth, trying to build a bridge again between the generations. I represent 3 generations of artists: ultra-contemporary artists who is Kakonya, with her contemporary Yurta, and very traditional modern artist Alibay Bapanov. I think we need this connection and this bridge, even for clients who want to collect contemporary art. They don't understand. They become like, they come to me, I don't understand this. Like, I think they should know the development of art in Kazakhstan. They should know the history of art, and then they will come to contemporary art. They will understand, and they will try to support and to buy contemporary artists. That's what I'm doing right now. And I really invite people, and I show this is a traditional artist, these are ultra-contemporary artists. So I'm also making a bridges, and in this case, probably they will get to contemporary art. The government too. I hope so.
But to come back to the question of this conversation, if Central Asian market exists, I don't know how many people you need to have, or which figure you need to have to say it exists or not, like what is the threshold. But what I wanted to say is that in the 8 years that I had the gallery, it has really changed. And for example, when I just started, it was very unusual for somebody from Kazakhstan to buy a piece of contemporary art. So mostly we were doing sales to international institutions or collectors who really understood our artists and what they were doing and found them important. So thanks to that, our gallery had enough support to continue through the years. And then recently, especially during COVID, we started to have this kind of like new generation of collectors from Kazakhstan who really stepped in. And we had people as young as, I don't know, 20 years old who bought like an expensive work from us. And it was actually very touching because it was the first time that we saw people interested in what we were showing, because the work we display in the gallery is quite challenging. We have almost no painters. It's mostly video, photographs, and installations. And we started to have this interest from local collectors. But in the past, I was speaking to some galleries from African countries, like namely, I spent quite a bit of time in Ghana. And there was always this kind of like question of Ghana having these international superstars, which were sold for like millions and millions of dollars on the international art market. But then there was this disconnection with local art collectors because they couldn't pay same prices as some of like international collectors. And I was asking them like, I don't know, do you do a separate price for local collectors? Because it's also, I guess, important for the artists to be represented in local collections. Or like, do you have a discounts? Like, how does that work? And so the galleries in Ghana told me, no, we sell like to everybody the same price point. And I was very surprised that like Ghanaian collectors also bought works at these kind of price points. To me, it seemed, wow, like this is incredible because, for example, we are working with Kaliyeva, and her videos could cost, I don't know, between 40,000 and 100,000 euro. And I was thinking like, I cannot imagine anybody in Kazakhstan who could spend that amount of work, of money on a work which is an edition, which is a video. Like, it's just like, I could not understand how it could work. But finally, this gap is closing, and we have maintained our prices the same for international collectors, for locals. And our local collectors start to travel abroad as well. They started to go to art fairs. Like, for example, last week I was at the Freeze Art Fair. I bumped into, I don't know, maybe 20 people from Kazakhstan who started to collect international contemporary art, and they started to realize that actually in Kazakhstan we have a lot of very good artists, but their prices may seem extremely expensive for Kazakhstan, but actually a fraction of the price of something that you would pay for international artists. So this kind of like huge gap, which I thought is just like, I don't know, a space which we'll never be able to fill, is coming closer, and there is understanding of, on the side of the collectors, why certain things cost a certain amount of money.
I also have this question about, we see now that the galleries and institutions are actually looking, I mean, in terms of the shows, are starting to look mostly the same, in a way that it's becoming, the galleries not becoming like this clean space only with the objects. It's very interesting to see this trend. We've been to the Berlin Art Week, and we saw that all major galleries actually did almost institutional shows within the galleries. And I also mentioned this in Span galleries, that you started to do this like very playful kind of like scenography and everything, so it kind of like more inviting and more engaging and looking very hybrid. Is that trend that it's the kind of you can really follow and you're going to develop and you're going to stick to? Because I think, for my personal opinion, it gives this understanding that this is important, that you have to be here, that it's like you have to come and pass by, and even if you don't buy out the artwork, you kind of like becoming the space to be, right? Is it changing?
Well, I think that, like, for example, when I do my programming, I look at the year ahead, and I think I need to have a balance of shows that will sell, so we have some income, and shows which are fun and that I would really like to do. But I cannot just do that, because then we'll cease from existence in like 2 years. So it has to be the right balance of more commercial shows and more kind of like curatorially interesting, more, I don't know, maybe like installation directed shows. So it's definitely kind of like the intention was always there to do shows which are more like an immersive experience, but it also dependent of like our, I don't know, funding, of how much we had to, how much money we had to do these exhibitions.
And does this sell better? Does this setting sell better?
Not necessarily, because I think like still, at least like Kazakhstani collectors, they are more, for them it's easier to understand art which is wall-based art, be it a painting, a drawing, maybe a photograph. But sometimes it's kind of like creates interest in the artist's work, and then maybe there is something else that we could show them. But it definitely attracts much more institutional interest. And we had a lot of inquiries, for example, from international institutions when they're attracted by an image. And also, like, we were receiving more press for international shows. Like, for example, last year, our exhibition of Ashat Ahmediyarov was reviewed by Art Forum and things like that. So it's, I guess it all helps, but it depends. Like, when you think about the gallery, I think you have to make certain number of sales for you to exist, but you also have to think about, I guess you would call it like institutional marketing. You want to show a strong program, and yeah, you have to balance it off.
I think the line is being blurred everywhere in the world, right? In the past 30 years, we see more galleries, you know, commercial guys like Larry Gagosian opening this powerhouse publishing, and museums are doing fundraising auctions, selling art. So I wouldn't be really, I always be skeptical about these deviations, like, oh, let's put it to the box of commercial and non-commercial. I think it's all kind of now also a part of the ecosystem, and the line is really gone at this point, more often than not. So yeah, we're just part of this change, I guess, quite organically. And I do have my ethical dilemmas sometimes, because I curate, which is of course one side of ecosystem, but I also consult and sell art sometimes, local art, international art. So you really gotta be honest with the context you are in and you are operating in, and just trying to make the proper ethical decisions from this point of departure. But it is quite doable, I would say. And many international dealers, curators combine these roles, seemingly conflicting, right? But it took me 10 years almost to kind of get rid of this myth and relax and just start doing what you like in, you know, different circumstances. And I'm really glad that we kind of overcome this obstacle to flip this page, because I think that was an obstacle in a way, because often, and even artistic community sometimes tries, I guess, to imply this ethics of Western markets onto Central Asia, which is a bit difficult because our infrastructure is rather underdeveloped, right? We're still in motion, and you know, it wouldn't be wise to demand these ethical principles in a context where it's not applicable, really. And I would conveniently say the same about maybe Chinese avant-garde and the wild times of the 90s, how it was done then. So yeah, something like that.
Yes, if we continue, Mika, you said our collectors buy more foreign art, and comparing to the prices, like they devaluate sometimes our local artists' prices. I think we should follow foreign world practice. For example, Turkey or Israel, they really support local artists, and they focused mostly on local artists, and then they buy foreign art. I think we can also, like, I don't know, maybe it should be done on government level, like educational programs, or somehow propaganda through, I don't know, Instagram or how it works, but we should buy local first, and then we should make it prestigious.
Yeah, but my question would be, what has to actually happen to make Kazakhstan collectors to buy more?
So we are
actually to be
working
committed.
hard on it. Like we are present in fairs, in international fairs, and through government also. Government should help on educational level, starting from kindergartens, from schools, and it should be like a cultural thing. You know, you have to buy.
I think it's not something that we can press on people and it has to appear itself. What can we do on our side as like people working in the art, produce beautiful shows, produce beautiful books, do lectures, talks, conversations, exhibit international exhibitions. And quite often when collectors see the interest of international institutions in an artist's work, they also start to pay attention. And this is true for everybody. And I think it will grow organically. What we need to do is just to do our work well.
Thank you. Yes, I can't agree more, indeed. And also, I think we need to really step away from this binary logic of like local market, international market. Also, oh my God, I came to this realization that there is no local market or global market. I mean, at some point, yes, but really there is good art and bad art, and there is professionalism and not. And you just operate within this modus, and then things magically emerge, right? I totally agree with just each part of the ecosystem got to do the work right, and you know we will see the beautiful seeds coming out of the ground very soon, I think.
Okay, thank you. So maybe we have questions.
Thank you. Super interesting discussion. I just was wondering, because you talked also about what could be done maybe at the governmental level, and there was this idea of the foundation perhaps. I was just thinking of this example of Uzbekistan, this Cultural Development Foundation, which is, I think, funded by the government. I mean, it has the daughter of the president, I think, that chairs it, if I understood correctly. And they are regularly participating in the Venice Biennale. They have, like, you know, both in the Art and Architecture Biennale. They had these 2 big exhibitions this year in Paris with the Louvre and the Institut du Monde Arabe. Of course, this is maybe the 2 exhibitions maybe not are not contemporary art, but nevertheless, I think they really attract attention to the Uzbek. I'm not sure. This is what I was wondering. Do these initiatives also help, in your opinion, to promote the market? And I think there's a bit of a similar situation in Azerbaijan. I'm not sure, but they seem to be also very present in the biennales. And so I was just wondering, to what extent do you think this helps? And at the same time, I think we know our situation also with the politically, and how, you know, this could be also, how can I say, not such a free expression of art, or maybe the art that is selected is not the most interesting, and therefore also, so like if you could share your thoughts about that, how this could influence the art market, and the comparison with Uzbekistan and Azerbaijan, if the representation in these events has helped their art market or not. Thanks.
Well, I think it's an interesting comparison to Uzbekistan, because it is true that since the last few years there was this very active foundation funded by the government, which is helping to promote the art of Uzbekistan, contemporary art, and also like older art on many different levels. If we would like to have something like this in Kazakhstan, yes, of course, it would have been amazing if we had a foundation which could fund the Venice Biennial, if it could create these international exhibitions, bring experts to Almaty, create all these wonderful programs. But to have something like this, it requires a very strong political will. And unfortunately, at the moment, we don't have such a political will kind of directed towards art and culture. So the interesting that you pointed out is that even if we had a foundation like this, you have some concerns about how free-spirited this and independent this organization would be. And I think there is a main question. I think, like, unless we had a foundation which is separate, for example, from the government, which may be funded by the government, but a little bit like a model in the United Kingdom, for example, where the art fund is separate from the Department for Culture. then we could ensure that maybe it has a board of advisors, maybe there are some, I don't know, art professionals working there who really know this. But so far we don't have that. And in a way, for example, there was a lot of governmental support for the art in Azerbaijan recently. And they also had these beautiful pavilions in Venice. They had a lot of state-sponsored exhibitions abroad. But in a way, what it has created is that the only artists who were receiving any kind of support, because there was no art market in Azerbaijan, there was no kind of like grassroots institutions. What this kind of governmental initiative created was that there became kind of like self-censorship among the artists, because only a certain number of artists who were kind of creating this image of contemporary Azerbaijan was supported by the government. But there were no galleries or foundations which were independent. And so in this sense, maybe like if there was not this like very strong governmental support, maybe there would have been much more grassroots initiatives in Azerbaijan. We don't know, you know, right? Like in history, we cannot say what could have happened if this didn't happen. But I think in a way that we didn't have the government support, we have these wonderful private institutions, galleries, I don't know, art advisors, everybody working from like very grassroots initiatives to make things happen. So I don't know, unless somebody could ensure the independence and professionalism of a art foundation like this, I think maybe we're good.
Let's not start crying.
No, we are working on it, actually. I started speaking with the government, and I hope at the moment is hearing government. So
Okay, text us when it's done.
I will, yeah.
All right, sweet.
We really need the foundation, and the Kazakh tourism also supported you in Istanbul, so it's amazing.
Whistleblowers.
Yeah, but I also agree on the point that this actually freedom gives us the actually enormous possibilities to configure the vision and market and artistic creation in a way that it's not configured by us, but it's just configured itself, like you said, organically. So I think this would be a wonderful solution for our conversation today. Understand that we are completely free and we are actually able and active to work together and very open to get together. And yeah, I wish at next Central Asia now we can also meet and discuss further questions and topics.
I have also one thing, the answer to your question, how we can motivate local businessmen or national companies to buy local art. I think through tax exemptions or tax-free zones to create this kind of, because this is a very big motivation which we don't have at the moment. We have only for charities and for other articles, but culture
yes,
we don't have.
They're not very attractive still, so it has.
But
they have to be. Yeah, they have to
yes,
be so attractive then that it's like, you know, it's going to work
if
itself.
it is,
yeah.
it's a good motivation. Especially France is a good example where we are now sitting. So tax exemption and tax-free zone, maybe. Who knows?
Okay, thank you so much. You have a question. Okay.
I think it's really marvelous that this discussion is happening here. I think it went mostly, and I think it's a crucial thing also about developing a local art market. I think that's a reality. Some artists may go international, but in terms of sustainability, I think the work you are doing, I only have experience with Aspan Gallery. Like making professional galleries, I think is crucial to that because they create a respect and a kind of a status where this is possible. And that's, I think, the tactical horizon. It's like, what do we develop? What's the urgencies we develop now? There's two elements which were not in this discussion, but which may be rather for a kind of strategic horizon. If I look at the Belgian situation from which I come, I see, and the kind of huge internationalization of that art scene. In the late 80s when it started, there was two other elements playing, I think. One was that important international galleries that in a certain way there came a kind of a wave of Flemish art. So I think that may be a thing to consider also, like, and I think galleries can be really important in like helping for that to happen, so that international galleries also help it. That's I didn't see. And the second element that I see is that galleries like St. or like Hufkens, which are like major international players that have a lot of international artists, together with the Flemish artists, they give also a kind of respect. Might that be, if we don't speak about the tactical urgencies now and how we develop a situation, which I think has happened in a marvelous way over the past years, is that something to conceive for a later stage? That would be my question to you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm full force, but this comment about like building locality, I'd be a little bit careful with that, and I agree that even the collections I consult, I always advise on balancing out between locality and whatever is happening in the similar communities, similar cultural contexts, because I wouldn't say that anybody is interested in solidly collection consisting only from Kazakh artists. I do not think it would be a fantastic collection. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm wrong?
But I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that it should contain only Kazakh artists, but mainly it should contain local. In my opinion, it's my
well,
opinion.
yeah, I mean, different strategies,
just the
different
local
collections.
market develop. How they will develop if you don't buy?
No, you buy them, but you not only buy them, but you also
yes,
acquire things similar. Oh, hello, Inga. From different geographies and places with similar discourses rotating in the air. And I think, for me personally, totally not a professional advice, but maybe on emotional level, culture exists when there is this form of the other, right? Like we really understand who we are, contrasting with other cultural identities. And I really love collections that, have this nerve in them. And I do believe that one geographies contribute to other geographies, and then, magically somehow it emerges. And it even really feels like when you live in your hometown, I think, and you experienced it, then, I wasn't a big fan of Kazakhstan before I left Kazakhstan. And then when you live long enough in the United States, you really peel out certain traumas and see how the world is complex and different, and there are no, right and wrong. It's just really different stages of development of different places, and it's okay. And the moment you accept it, you really fall in love with whatever you left behind. And again, it happens in my very personal imperial experience when you leave one cultural strata and just find yourself in another. And then you dig it and compare and relate and reflect. So that was maybe my personal experience. Yeah.
Another question?
No, sure.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, and thank you for the beautiful conversation. Just a quick question, if you are familiar with the Mongolian art market and scene. They did participate last year in the Biennale, and I was wondering whether you have any idea of the impact this had on the art market in Mongolia and or on their perception on the markets and in general, what is like the Mongolian art scene.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, there was a Mongolian pavilion last year.
Yeah, there was.
At least I wasn't invited to it, and it's been going on for quite a few years now. I think the first one was there in 2015. So I'm not very familiar with Mongolian art market. I've never been to Ulaanbaatar. I spoke only to one person who is a curator from Mongolia. But I know that there are at least 3 artists from Mongolia who are represented by international galleries. And there is, for example, a gallery in New York, which represents some artists from Kazakhstan, but also from Mongolia, and artists from like different countries as well. There is a gallery in Italy that you introduced me to. Well, not the gallery, but the artist that you exhibited at the Public Art Festival from Mongolia, who is represented by Italian gallery. So, personally, I cannot tell you about the art market in Mongolia, but I can say that there are a number of artists who are known on international art market. I don't think there is much impact from having a pavilion in Mongolia to having art market in the country, because it's just like two different spheres. But it's definitely gaining momentum, I think, on international art scene.
Can I just, I just wanted to respond to that question because I'm the, hi Mika. My name is Christiana Bonin. I work with the Mongolian Gallery and can say just a little bit to answer your question. The scene in Mongolia in terms of the art market is very nascent, but as they both as the panel mentioned, there's a robust practice of art making that has existed in Mongolia for many, many years. And we actually have a pop-up exhibition in Meruert now, featuring Mongolian contemporary artists. So just to answer your question, yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? No. Okay. Yeah, thank you so much for being here and listening to us. And of course, you're welcome to get the context of our galleries. And please stay tuned and be interested in what we do. And we are happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Here to fix the slides for the next.
Okay.